Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Adhir Mattu. Adhir is the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer of Marvell Semiconductor, a company with roughly $3 billion in annual revenue. Adhir has been with the company for nearly 4.5 years and has been the Chief Information Officer multiple times over across his career, mostly with tech centric organizations like the one he's currently a part of. And thus, he's had an unusual amount of experience in leading IT at companies where tech talent pervades the entire organization. Adhir, great to speak with you today. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Peter. Great to be on your podcast, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, I gave a brief introduction there, but I'd love to have you talk in your own words for those who may be less familiar as to Marvell Semiconductor's business. Can you provide a brief overview, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Peter. Marvell Semiconductor, we are a global semiconductor solutions company, Peter. We develop solutions for what we call as data infrastructure services, and we serve 5G, automotive, cloud, and enterprise markets. Our mission is to develop and deliver semiconductor solutions that move, store, process, and secure the world's data faster and more reliably than anyone else. We're a global company. We are located in many countries. We have had an incredible transformational journey in last few years, as you might have heard and read. Very proud of being in Marvell. I've been with the company for last about 4 years now.
That's wonderful. Yeah. And I would love to talk a bit about the remarkable changes that you've seen across your tenure, especially a story of growth. Before we do so, I mentioned there also at the outset that you, throughout your career, have been a technologist in technology companies primarily. And that's always an interesting thing. I always enjoy hearing more about that experience. There are many companies where the preponderance of IT talent is in the IT division itself. In your case, across many companies, including, of course, at Marvell Semiconductor, there is technology talent throughout the company. Talk about the way in which you see differentiating the IT department from the other engineering functions across the organization.
Yeah, Peter, that's a great question. And working in a technology firm like Marvell and working in IT department, it's very exciting because if you think about it, our company develops semiconductor chips, semiconductor solutions, and I describe the markets that we serve, and our chips go into storage and networking and in various IT platforms and assets that departments like mine support and manage. We are surrounded by this immense amount of talent, engineers who are very smart. We have many PhDs who specialize in these kind of technologies. So in a way, it's very humbling that we are the IT people who are supporting IT, whereas we are supported by these very smart, intelligent engineers who create those chips that go into the solutions that we procure, deploy, provision, and support. So sometimes it becomes very interesting that when we are meeting with some of these engineering teams and we talk about storage solutions and compute solutions, and many times these discussions become very interesting because these are the folks who actually design the components inside those boxes. I think this is incredibly rewarding and in many times humbling experience. But I think more than anything else, it's a great collaboration that we have between our IT team and the engineering product development teams. It's great. I love this setup.
You mentioned earlier the remarkable change that you've seen and help usher in across your tenure of closing in on 4 years with the organization. The company's grown just in terms of market value from less than $5 billion to more than $40 billion in pro forma market value in the past 5 years. Talk a bit about what that's been like, as well as the role that IT plays in fostering that growth. I can only imagine that given that pace, constantly staying ahead of not only where the organization plans to be in the coming months and year, but the dramatic change that is foreseen as the growth continues. How do you stay ahead of that?
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, when I landed in Marvell, our company was had just started this incredible transformational journey, and we had a great leadership team in place, and very dynamic and great CEO, Mr. Matt Murphy. Under his leadership, we got going on this. Now, from an IT standpoint, as we started to support the business, what we did was we initially created our own roadmap to support the business. So we call it now digital transformation roadmap. We call it phase 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So we had this initial game plan set up right from the very beginning. And then in order to execute that, obviously we needed strong IT talent in the group. So we started, first of all, reorganizing and reskilling or upskilling our own IT organization. So that IT organizational transformation had to happen, which happened. And some of the things that we initially started to do was one of the key things we wanted to ensure that we did was to, and I know this is called operational excellence or operational efficiency, but what we really meant by that was that we wanted to make the life of our employees easy in terms of doing any day-to-day work, internally or externally. So that was our goal. So with that mindset, we started to roll out some of the world-class service delivery platforms, some of the collaboration tools and systems. We have been investing in best-in-class tools in that front. And then obviously, some of these shifts that have happened in the industry for last many years now, we started to move our systems from on-prem to cloud. That helped us become more nimble and agile and brought more scalability. Some of the new initiatives we started to do are enhance our business intelligence and advanced analytics capabilities. That gave business much more visibility into, for example, sales pipeline and HR information or supply chain information. We work very closely with our engineering teams. Some of the things that we helped engineering teams to do was implement high performance compute and engineering infrastructure. So bottom line was we are trying to help them reduce their design cycle times. Cybersecurity is always a big ticket item for us. We have scaled up our cybersecurity operations and made it more solid, but that's always an ongoing effort, as you know. And then so obviously we did our best to support Marvell from during this growth, which happened not only organically but also via M&As. In last about 4 years, we are on our fourth acquisition. So IT team has played a very instrumental role in ensuring that M&As go smoothly. We are able to integrate the companies that we acquire and then accelerate the synergies and ensure that integration happens smoothly and without disrupting any business operations or our customers.
Let's linger on that point for a moment, if you don't mind, Adhir. Um, with so many acquisitions under your belt, to what extent has your team developed kind of a blueprint as to what to do when integrating an acquired company?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, our first acquisition was Cavium. That was in 2017, and at that time, many of us in the company had recently joined. In fact, many of my IT leaders had joined, so we started from pretty much from scratch. And as I mentioned earlier, we are on our fourth acquisition integration now, with Inphi recently having been closed from an acquisition standpoint. So with so many acquisitions under our belt, we have now developed pretty significant integration capabilities. In fact, IT integration capabilities are the cornerstone of our company's M&A strategy. So after we did Cavium, which was very complex acquisition, we created blueprints for ERP integration, for infrastructure integration, and so forth. And I think over a period of time, our and it's not just IT. It is IT operations, sales, marketing, many other business groups who work collaboratively. In fact, we became so good that Aquantia and Avera, the two acquisitions after Cavium, we were able to integrate ERP systems for those companies in weeks rather than even in months. Now, I would um, one of the key things that we have kept in mind is that besides the blueprint, we also follow certain guiding principles, because if you don't have certain parameters that you're working within or certain guiding principles, sometimes it becomes very complex. So we have some guiding principles that we follow. But more than the blueprints, I think I would give credit to our company culture and to our employees and our people who make these integrations successful. So yeah, it's a combination of the frameworks that we have, the blueprints we have, the people and the company culture that we have become very, very good in these M&As now.
Your team also helps drive customer experience, which is a relatively, in the grand scheme of things, a newer domain for chief information officers and their teams to get involved in. Talk a bit about the way in which you and your team do so at Marvell.
Sure. So in terms of driving customer experience, we partner with our marketing and sales teams and business units, and that's always an ongoing initiative for us. So some of the initiatives that we helped were last year. In fact, this was right after COVID hit. We partnered with our marketing team and helped launch Marvell's rebranding campaign, which was highly successful. And the reason we feel very proud of that was not only it was successful from the standpoint of great recognition that it received from our customers and investor community, but this was done during the time when everybody was working from home and had all sorts of COVID challenges. Then on the other side, we have, like any other company, we have many external facing digital properties, which again, last year around this time around, we ported those to a more modern, scalable, cloud-based, world-class infrastructure that we have put it on. So I think from infrastructure standpoint, we are on a great footing in terms of our teams. And now, once we build that baseline, we have been now collaborating with our sales and business unit teams and marketing teams to continue improving our experience for the customers. So that's from an external digital property standpoint. Our engineering, on the engineering side, we work with our engineering teams because we have this model where our teams work very closely with our customers and co-develop custom ASICs. So that requires enabling infrastructure. So IT team again rises to the occasion, and we have been supporting our teams and ensuring that those projects that are co-developed with our customers, they have appropriate infrastructure supporting and ensuring that we have best possible customer experience.
Very interesting. And I know that you and your team have also been thinking about new digital ways of work and new digital workers, so to say. Talk about the model that you're in the process of designing, please.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we have been investing in best-in-class collaboration technologies, whether it is audio, video, or remote connectivity and those things. But that's not where life stops these days, particularly in the digital world that we are living. And as hopefully COVID situation becomes better and better everywhere globally. Like many of the companies in the industry, we are looking forward to having this flexible workplace with hybrid experience for our employees. So that's where some of these digital technologies that we have been exploring and implementing to some extent come into picture. So we have developed certain roadmaps and certain strategies where what we want to do is enable and empower our human workforce with some of these digital technologies to make their life easier, even more easy and productive. So one of the platforms that we are in the process of rolling out is RPA-based platform that helps deploy digital workers. And since this is a relatively new area, so we deployed a model whereby this is not just an IT thing. This is a business initiative. So what we have done is we have started what is called the network of excellence, where folks from, I mean, you might have heard about center of excellence, right? That's one group sitting somewhere in some part of the corner or maybe a couple of corners and execute and support. But this is network of excellence where we have certain number of folks who could be anywhere, who could be from any group, and based on their background and competency level and of course their interest, so we bring them together. So using that governance model, we have initiated a journey on rolling out digital workers in the company. So far we have rolled out about 4 or 5. And the concept behind these digital workers is that we expect the mundane, manual, high volume, mechanical, boring tasks to be done by these digital workers, whereas more complex, intelligent work will be handled by our human workforce, and a combination of the digital workers and human workers will lead us to a new world where folks will become more productive, and that's what we're working towards.
That's very interesting. I've quite a vision for what the future might hold. Speaking of the future, Adhir, I wanted to ask you, as you look to the future, what trends particularly excite you, let's say 2 or 3 years out, that you're beginning to invest in now or beginning to make their way onto your roadmap?
Yeah, some of the trends that I briefly described. So these digital technologies, digital assistants, digital workers. So obviously that's where we are very interested in exploring how these could help. And also, since we are a design semiconductor solution development and design house, with our manufacturing is outsourced, but we have deep interest in that, even though it is outsourced. We still have some extent of test floor operations and new product introductions and so forth. So we are definitely interested in technologies which are classified under Industry 4.0. And then the other thing I would say is post-pandemic hybrid workplace experience that we're all working towards. And I know Marvell is not the only company doing that. And the interesting thing is nobody has, as far as I know, a solution for that. Everybody seems to be experimenting. So that's one new trend or one area where we are now actively engaged and involved in figuring out how best to integrate physical and digital worlds. So that's going to be our key priority, at least for next year or so. And lastly, cybersecurity, that always keeps everyone on the edge. We're always looking for new methods and means and tools on how better we can protect our company's information assets and physical assets. So that's always interesting.
Interesting indeed. Well, Adhir Mattu, thank you so much for taking time with me today on Technovation. It's been a pleasure to learn more about the remarkable growth you've helped manage at your company, your vision for the future, including ways in which the various parts of the organization will fit together in the new digital models that you anticipate. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you, Peter. Always nice to talk with you. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Thanks.
A pleasure.